there are universal principles in what we apply to athletes, and the higher the level, the more strategy there is behind the application of coaching. And most coaches, when they go into the industry, and for a long period of time, there'll be coaches in the OC that come in that may have been in the industry for 5-10 years, and they still feel lost, and they still feel as though they lack clarity, and they still feel as though they're coming to you to seek clarity over who they want to work with, what they're good at, what message they want to deliver, what impact they want to have. And if they can figure those 4 things out, they'll nudge forwards quite substantially, right? But one thing that they will still struggle with is, whether you want to call it the imposter syndrome, whether you want to call it an inability to make decisions and be the authority in the coaching process, second guessing themselves, having the confidence behind their own methodology and their own methods. Because most coaches, and this is just the nature of the industry, most coaches will be coached by someone, and then they will essentially apply all the same things that they were coached to their own clients.
I did that with you.
The same thing, right? And I did that to an extent, but the more people you work with, the more knowledge you get, the more you start to refine on, this is now my approach, and I mold that to the people in front of me with manipulations and adjustments based on what I feel as though is right. And I'll take multiple things from multiple people and then deliver what I feel as though is perfect. And then the longer you do it, the better you get it. But the whole notion of bodybuilding is there's clear strategy in the coaching process from the minute you start to the end goal, and then what happens after the end goal, and it's always outcome orientated. And the thing we were explaining yesterday was the minute they start thinking like that, whether it was the running coach we spoke to, whether it was the rehabilitation coach, whether it was the body composition based coach, whether it was the S&C coach doing Olympic lifting, the minute they start onboarding clients, treating them like that, like with an athlete mindset where there's an outcome to every training phase. There's a timeline we build in terms of the client journey moving to that end goal. And it's not just week 1, here's your diet, here's your training plan. Because the client still lacks clarity. The client has no, they can't kind of take themselves back and look at the process on paper long term. One thing you do with the people moving into the OC is you'd map out the journey, right? Yeah. This is what we need to focus on. This is where we want to get to. But these are the yards we've got to cover and the reps we've got to hit to get there. And most coaches don't coach like that.
No, I totally agree. I think there's a few things I want to touch on. I've applied the same thing, I think subconsciously, but when you ask or bring it up, it becomes apparent, is you've learned from a broad range of people, you being one of them, where you take what you need from each thing, which for people in the room yesterday was different for every individual. You disregard what isn't necessarily useful, and then you add what is kind of uniquely your own, or you add from bits from other people as well, and then you're left with your unique coaching ethos, principle, philosophy, your method. Because when it comes to coaching, we always talk about, you coach the who, so that's the person. You coach the what, the actual transformation that you get them, which you've obviously covered off the different kind of 4 different categories you mentioned there. And then there's the last part, which is that how do you do it? Because you didn't invent progressive overload, you didn't invent deficits or surpluses or time under tension or any of that, but you have your belief system based on the culmination of all the advice and knowledge you've acquired. And then I also think, and what you said was, I think bodybuilding there's a lot of stuff we can say, I suppose, negatively about it, but in looking at the things that we can take from it and apply to every part of the industry, I think one thing that bodybuilding is incredibly good at is applying a process. Like, there's a real process. That was your last point, isn't it? It's like the process is phases and outcomes and KPIs and behaviors and everything in between. And the process gives clarity to the coach and the client. So if everyone's clear, if someone's not clear, they won't implement, or they physically can't implement what you expected. And I think this is where, if there is mismatched expectation between coach and client, you're going to have a lack of adherence as you assumed it would be. So it's who is it? I can't remember who it is. It's the quote of, unspoken expectations are premeditated resentments. Do you know what I mean? You're going to have an issue with them later on. But you're like, why is this fucking client not doing what I'm saying? Because they're not clear. So if I said to you, right, Cal, we've got 10 people coming around, one's a vegetarian, one's a vegan, and that's all the information I give you is like, make dinner for them. but I've not told you one's allergic to nuts. I've not told you what time. I've not told you how big a meal. I've not told you how long we've got. I've not told you how long you've got to make it. You can't possibly deliver on my expectation.
Yeah.
And I think bodybuilding is fucking fantastic at that. It's very prescriptive and regimented and structured.
Yeah, yeah. And the structuring of that and the strategy behind it is the difference. Like, you can even see with the coaches that were there yesterday and the coaches that came to the London seminar and the people that had implemented some of those principles and the people that put the hand up, and there was tens and tens of them in the room. When you spoke to those people, you could see like the clarity and confidence they had in like who's onboarded new clients since we had that chat. Loads of people put their hands up. Yeah, all of them put their hands up. And every single one of those individuals, they all said they have more clarity. They have more confidence delivering the coaching process in the first place, because they actually, there's like, if you understand in your mind truly, you can coach it easily. And you can meet the client where they're at and give them exactly what they need at that given time and then evolve it over time. But if you don't have that initial foundation built, you can't deliver it to the client.
No, a client can only be clear if the coach is clear.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of coaches do struggle, is they're not really clear on how the coaching is structured. And it's like the client comes, you say meet them where they're at. They come where they're at. And I think it starts with the coach isn't actually clear on where the fuck they want to go.
Yeah.
Because I remember filling in the intake form for you, which was fucking ridiculous. Is it still as ridiculous as it was then?
I've got a shortened version, but I honestly, like, the funny thing is I still send the 35-pager.
Yeah, it was
because
fucking
I
heavy.
know that if they fill out the 35-pager, that's the type of client I want to work with. And if the person says, sorry mate, it's way too long, you're not the client for me. Because if you don't want to do that, you're not going to do the stuff I tell you to do in the coaching process.
At your level.
At my level.
Yeah, because like if you're coaching Steve and fucking Susan from down the road in LA Fitness,
exactly,
they're not going to fill that out, and that's fine. So this is earning the right to do that.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. It's like, I think when you earn the right to work with a more complex, advanced clientele, then actually adding friction to the process can be a strategic tool, because obviously we're obviously taught to remove friction at all times.
Yeah, for most of the people listening to this, if you're not, 10, 15 years into your career and you're like super razor sharp focused on this type of person with this outcome, you want to make the process for the client in terms of adherence and execution as easy as possible, because ultimately adherence dictates outcomes, right? The longer you go down that path, the more specific and refined you can be. And for me now, it's almost like that is my pre-qualification step one of if they consult with me and they send me back the email or the WhatsApp with everything mapped out, everything detailed of what they've done over the last 12 to 18 months, all the information I want, they've got blood work, they've got photos, they've got a log of everything, this is my ideal client.
I think that's like one of the big lessons so far then, is like if you're not clear, if your onboarding process isn't clear in the gathering of the information as to where they have been, where they are now, and where they want to go, it's fucking impossible for you to be clear on the mission. And if you are the leader of the mission, it's impossible if you're not clear. If we're going for a walk from the villa, and I'm not clear on where the fuck we're going, and I'm leading you, we're both getting lost. And that's what happens. So when it comes to onboarding clients, because we're kind of right at the start here, I suppose it's going to be different levels for different people, but what do you reckon people should be asking?
So we want to get an insight, like almost the three things that we said on those 8 pillars yesterday for the onboarding or the priming phase at the start. Like, as a universal rule, it will be their current mindset and psychology behind where they are right now and what's got them to that point, and also why they've actually knocked on your door. Like, why are you here in the first place? What made you reach out to me? What have you consumed that you thought, that's a trigger for me to go, right, I'm going to bite the bullet and reach out to this guy?
Impulse.
What was the impulse? What was the trigger? And why is that trigger there in the first place? Because 99% of those people will have tried to do this goal or complete this goal before, maybe several times with several other coaches, and they've not got there. And your kind of key to unlock that door, literally through the coaching process, if you can figure out why it's failed in the past and why they've knocked on your door, if you can fix that, they're going to get a client that gets results. That's almost like rule number one for the especially in the transformation sector, but even like Olga, the running coach yesterday, like the client that she got that wanted to run that marathon in sub 3 hours.
Yeah.
Why has that failed in the past? Tell me everything you've done up to this point.
Tried, yeah.
What have you done? What have you tried? What was the parts that were flawed? What were the parts that were successful? If you can learn all that, then you've almost figured out your answer for how to get results with that individual. But most coaches see it at face value. They won't delve into that depth, and then they start no better off than the coach that last coached them that they left.
It's just information gathering,
Yeah.
which is the primary goal of a coach. That's you are a data analyst.
Yeah.
Which is quite a depressing reality.
Data analyst and then
People manager,
problem solver.
an emotional support vehicle and everything in between. But I
Yeah.
think like finding out where they're at and how many times they've tried and what they've tried. And I think in the early days, what I would recommend is if you can do it because you have less clients, is to facilitate a meeting with the client to actually discuss it rather than send them a form.
100%.
Again, earning the right, because you don't have the expertise to curate the form to ask the right questions, because I actually think it's the secondary questions that give most clarity.
And like there's something in that, like I can guarantee that if a client inquires with X coach and they've had 3 coaches in the past,
Yeah.
the last 3 coaches they had didn't listen.
Yeah.
And the number one skill you have as a coach at the start is just listen and absorb. Because if you spend time listening and absorbing, and you cue the right questions and have the right prompts, you get all the information you need
Yeah.
to hit the mark at the start.
Yeah.
And you can guarantee the 3 coaches they left and churned through before that were the 3 coaches that didn't take the time to listen,
Yeah.
and they didn't start at the right point, and they didn't give them what they needed at that time, and that's why it's failed.
Yeah, I think it's actually not as complicated as people make it. You can make it more complicated. You should make it more complicated later on, but in the early days, at least at the early days, like years 1 to 5, you can rank the complexity. But in the early days, if it can be a meeting with the client, then it's like, what have you tried before? X. And why do you think that didn't work?
Yeah.
Because like that secondary question is the one that then allows you into the psychology, because if it's data analyst, it's also, you become a kind of psychologist of sorts.
It's just human behavior.
That is it. I've said this so many times to coaches.
It's human behavior.
You are managing human behavior. So why did that not work? And the answer might not be scientifically correct. I don't think it was in a deficit.
It doesn't.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
It tells you what it tells you where they found the friction and the roadblock.
Yeah.
And where then to focus, and then becoming again clear on where do they want to go. Once you're clear on where they want to go, it's like, well, and why? Like, what's the? Because if it's, for me, it's people want to make more money. It used to be people want to be shredded. Okay, why? What does that give you? What does being shredded give you that you don't currently have?
Yeah.
When you've got that, you now have the inside track on what's going on in their brain. So you're able to then meet them where they're at. And then over the years, you ramp the complexity. Now you've got, how many pages do you say? 30 something.
Say again.
30 page something form. You sent me some fucking hellish form.
Yeah, it's like 32 pages.
I quite enjoyed filling it out. But
well, the funny thing is that for me is, if I have that initial interaction, and when I first started coaching and PTing, like I would meet them for a coffee, I'd meet them for a Zoom call, and there'd be no agenda. I would just talk.
Yeah.
I would absorb, I would talk, I would understand where they are psychologically, where their mindset is. You figure out pretty quickly when you're just listening to them and spending the time with them, you're building rapport, you're building a relationship, you're building trust in the first place.
Sure.
But you also understand where their limiting beliefs are.
Yeah.
And it's like opening Pandora's box, right? If you can open Pandora's box and figure out like all those things that are the limitations and why they're in the position they're in now, and they almost like compact harder and harder and harder the longer they go.
Yeah.
Then it's like, right, I can leave that call, and almost I can script my questions that I reply back to them, what I need from that in the first place. It may not be something that's preset, it may be something you adjust based on that initial call.
That's important.
And it's then relevant to them. But
Tailored.
It's tailored, but the first hurdle to get over is human behavior, and it's understanding that psychological element at the start, because like with any goal, and the relevance of bodybuilding and the relevance of me working with athletes now, even at the very highest level, the athletes that make the most progress, that will go the furthest, will be people that I have the deepest level of emotional buy-in from, and the people that I understand their psychology the most clear at the start.
Same. And I think it's understanding they come to you using the stick, and your job is to find the carrot.
100%, yeah.
Once you found the carrot, Your job is to tailor the coaching process, be that your checking sheets and the data you're collecting or the workouts or everything in between, to suit the carrot. Because it's usually been batter yourself into submissions, what they've tried before. Hasn't worked. Okay, here's a question then. Why do you think that people don't think that bodybuilding is relevant to them?
Because they think bodybuilding as a process is just diet, rigidity, training hard, and battering yourself in the gym.
Okay.
And from a competitive perspective, there are obviously enhancement and PED application with that as well. But when you look at bodybuilding at the highest level and the stuff that we do day to day, the human behavior and the psychological aspect of it is like the laying the foundations of your house. And regardless of whether it's an amateur competitor or somebody that I know is has the potential to go on and win the Mr. Olympia, which is like, it'd be like winning the Champions League in football. It's the highest of the highest, winning the World Cup. The main crack in their ability to do that and things crumble is not the diet they're following, is not the training program they're on, is not the drug application. The biggest thing is what goes on in those top 2 inches. And if I can nail that at the start, I know that the client is going to go on and achieve the goal, but that's almost like the prerequisite for everything else to come. And I think, people see bodybuilding as like just meatheads that don't have any thought process, that it's just there's one way, there's the hard way, and you just get there by
some of
any
that's
means.
fair.
And it's fair.
In some parts of bodybuilding.
In some parts, but
which makes it hard to unfuck because there's a positive feedback loop.
But because I think the only difference for me is because I have started from very humble beginnings in terms I've worked with those Gen Pop clients for years and years and years. And the first few years of my career were all of those types of individuals where it was 30 kilos worth of weight loss and they still weren't in shape at the end of the process. But for them, that was the most life-changing years of their life in terms of the transition from them being unhappy, not confident, and having very low self-esteem to suddenly being these confident individuals that loved training, that loved investing into their health and fitness, that loved the longevity that new lifestyle and confidence gave them. Like the skills that were developed in understanding what made those people tick and what was the kind of light bulb moment. And we mentioned about Tony Robbins for us yesterday. Like what was their kind of enlightening moment there?
What was the match that lit the fuse?
What was the match that lit the fuse? Like if you understand that, then you can apply that to any client walking through the door. And for me, and you can see that in the people in the group yesterday, the guys and the girls that understand that are the ones that almost then just like, you just unlock the leash and it's like, how far do you want to take this?
Yeah, I think the bodybuilding is, I agree with what you're saying, people think it's just meatheads eating chicken and rice.
Which some of it is part of it, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not just that. And I think I said to the coaches in my preamble for you speaking, to try to deal with the clear unspoken in the room, was I think anyone partaking in any physical endeavor at any level in any way is a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
I think we've just applied that badge to I don't think the silos in the industry are a good thing.
Yeah.
The us and them. Oh, well, we're CrossFitters, or we're this, we're
Agreed.
that.
Yeah.
Those fucking labels create silos, and that then prevents your ability to then see that there are lessons to be taken from every single one of them.
Yeah.
Yes, a large percentage of it won't be relevant or directly applicable. It can be indirectly applicable.
Yeah.
And I think therefore, if you're a running coach, you're still bodybuilding. It's just the body you're building isn't the one that I would choose to build.
Yeah.
If you want to look like that, great. It might not be that that's the main driver.
Universal principles.
Well, that's what we said the other day, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it having that universal principle of, is having that toolbox, the utility belt of understanding all these different things, the human behavior and everything else. It's like the science of it, not just the random shite of trying to apply this, that, and the other. For me, one of the holes I ended up going down deeply was, I remember being introduced to Luke indirectly by you, Luke Lehman. And then finding Luke and going down this fucking hole of biochemistry.
Yeah.
But I can't tell you how useful that's been.
Yeah.
The number of questions I've been asked in this villa, I've got this problem, what should I take? I've got this is happening, I've overstimulated, have you got anything I can take for that? Or,
Yeah.
I think for me it's about taking those little nuggets, and I think that's bodybuilding.
Yeah.
when did bodybuilding become just a physical appearance thing?
And well, that's the thing. Like, it's the underlying tone of that is everything else involved, and that's the valuable part that any coach working with any client can kind of take from that. And like from my thought process, like with what we do with our clients now, it's like it's this layering of a cake. It's building that pyramid of like, here's the foundation, and then we're layering on the different things that we can then optimize from there. Just like you would do with the Optimised Coach, where you're layering on almost, business acumen, then branding, and then message, and then systems and all that stuff. It would be layered on. The coaching process is everything's got a specific outcome, and this is the order we do it in. And that then becomes, like we spoke about your coaching eye, that becomes your strategy, and then it kind of forms everything you do from that point.
And that comes right back to what I said at the start. If you don't have a coaching process, how the fuck are you going to get something? You're not.
Can't.
You might hit gold a few times, but you will not hit home runs at the rate that you could be hitting home runs if there was in the first priming phase or whatever you call it. Like, I know you go priming. Is that what you call yourself? Or not?
Yeah.
Luke had least mode.
Yeah.
And then mine was called the client slingshot.
Yeah.
So all those different phases, like without that phase, you just get started towards the big goal.
Yeah.
So again, let's use a meal as an example. If you're making a meal, you're going to make X meal. The first phase is finding the fucking ingredients and probably chopping them.
Yeah.
You don't just throw a whole pepper in the pan and be pissed off that your salad has got seeds in it and a fucking stalk.
Yeah.
You would, the lack of those phases, the lack of that process is one of the major reasons I think coaches aren't getting the results that they want with their clients. And I think that's one of the biggest things you can take from bodybuilding is phase X, phase Y, phase Z. And I know that for you is integral to your coaching. And then for me, I add on top of that the intellectual property of naming those phases in a way that psychologically plays to the client's needs.
Yeah.
If someone asked you yesterday about if someone went through a priming phase and then hit a sticky spell in phase 2, what would phase 2 say? Fat loss, I think he said.
It's like the first progressive phase. So it's either going to be building tissue or fat loss, yeah.
So it was like a fat loss phase. The client went priming into fat loss, and in fat loss, that client shat the bed for a week. He said, would you move them back into a priming phase? And your answer wasn't black and white in terms of yes or no. Share your answer, and then I can add on my bit.
Well, we mentioned about like the psychological tone of feeling as though they're regressing and keeping the client like bought in, but maybe you change the terminology but still focus on the same factors to be reviewed.
Yeah, because if you say you're going back to a priming phase, back to suggests to me regression.
Yeah.
And suggests to me I'm failing.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's like a life raft phase or something like that,
yeah.
it suggests like we acknowledge the fuck up.
Yeah.
But we've got this little mini phase that gets people out.
Yeah.
I think like all of what we've already spoken about, I think is what we're both trying to do with the ICM and the OC in terms of bridging the gap between the lack of results and results. I think for coaches, it's systemizing
both sides.
Define both sides.
Yeah.
What are the two?
Once you have synergy there, then
what two sides are you talking about for the sake of anyone?
Well, I like us as a collective. I think you're very different in that space because you've got the years and years of depth behind the actual coaching practice as well. But from your side at face value now, it is like this is business 101. But the differentiating factor with you is you've done the coaching thing for years and years and years and years as well. So you understand both at a very high level. But most of the kind of businessy type interactions that people will get are like, if you've got that red and blue pill, it's 100% business and 0% coaching.
Agree.
And if we can balance those two together, then it's like it's just taking everything you need, the shop front and then the shop filled with everything you want and putting them both together. We can't just have one or the other. Like I was the other side. I was like coaching practice, clueless about business for 10 years.
Yep.
And at some point you're going to have to focus on the other side to continue to grow it. But you can kind of get away with it if you've got the consistent conveyor belt of social proof and results to an extent, which is why we had that conversation yesterday. But it can't be the other side.
I think the world's just changed so much, and that's why you and I are having these discussions. That's why you and I are where we are, trying to do what we're trying to do in the industry, and normalize the idea that it's not coaching mastery or business mastery. It's the fucking mastery of the whole thing, which needs a cool sticker put on it. It needs a title. It's 100%, which is it's the mastery of the entire thing, not one or the other. It's not 50-50, it's 100 and 100.
Yeah.
And when you achieve that is when coaches always come to me, and this is maybe a nice point to conclude on, is coaches come to me and they're always, what they want is, or what they say they want is money, and why they say they want that is freedom.
Yeah.
But I think that freedom probably translates to options.
Yeah.
This is an option. We're sat in an option right now. Like the option to come and work in the sun for a week. The option to bring your mates along with you. So I think for us, it's like, is that fair to say that that's the mission statement? What is the mission statement in your mind between you and I in the industry? And then we can conclude on that. What are we doing?
Well, firstly, we're leaving it a better place than we found it.
And everyone that we work with as well.
And everyone that we interact and work with. We are... I think the longer you do it, the longer you can kind of see the gaps that will be made. The further things advance, and I think that fills that gap perfectly, because it gives the ability, like for when I first started out in the industry, it will give, for what it took me 10 years to do, even longer, and the same for you, it will give everyone exactly what they need, exactly at the right time, and you can literally get it the first year you start coaching. And if you imagine now, like if we were to start coaching in 2014 again, with the same brain that we have now.
Fucking hell, bro.
Can you imagine? But that you have the ability to do that now for people that are entering the industry, where you can get a fast track.
This villa would be a fucking castle.
But exactly. But you can get a fast track of what was learnt from years and years and years and years of making mistakes and refining it. And I think it's so easy for coaches to spend a long, long period of their time in their career not finding what's actually relevant and what will move the needle, because there's so much stuff out there that just won't get them there. Here's
the thing that's in my head to conclude then. I think it's like, if we say that my side is the business and marketing, I'm going to put a sticker on yours, and you can throw it at me if you don't like it, but I feel like it's like the architect of, like you're a body architect in many ways.
Yeah.
Fair or not?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so is the bumper sticker the marketect? It's like you're a marketer and an architect. Yeah. It's like the mastery of that.
Yeah.
Is when the synergy happens between those two things, marketing and the body architecture. All of a sudden now you have a business that will facilitate world-class results. So that's a world-class outcome for the paying client.
Yeah.
And as long as you're getting that, you will have world-class outcomes for you if you've systemized the business in a way that leverages it ethically, morally, to give you time to do shit like that, if that's what you want.
Yeah. Like, look at any business. Like, look at like where are these mics from? Shure, or like Rode, or Apple, for example. Like they don't just have incredible marketing; they have an incredible product. And most coaching businesses that are stuck have one and don't have the other.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
No, I totally agree with that. Seems like a good place to wrap. Brother, man, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Always appreciate it. We'll do it again, guys. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe button. We will join you again soon. Have a good day. See you later. Goodbye.